everybody, it's Amanda Mattice, your Heckman librarian still at home. So today's video is going to take a few steps back as we continue our discussion of how to evaluate sources. The last few videos that I made talked about some particular websites and tools and techniques that you can use for evaluating fake news, but I want to talk about just foundationally, what do we need to think about when we are judging a source? How do we identify what's trustworthy and what isn't? Today I'm going to share with you a little acronym that can help you think through an example of how to judge a website. Let me show you. So what is this handy acronym that can help us sift the good sources from the not so good sources? Well, it shouldn't be too hard to remember. It's the CRAAP test. C-R-A-A-P, CRAAP test. What does this stand for? The first thing that we want to consider with evaluating according to the CRAAP test is currency. So you take your source that you're evaluating and ask, when was this published or updated? Does your topic need current information, or will older sources work as well? So there's a lot of things we can unpack there. Obviously, older sources might not have the most up-to-date information, so it might not be a trustworthy source if it's too old. But then again, that also depends on the topic that you're considering. If it's something scientific, medical, technical, you definitely want the most up-to-date information. Maybe certain history topics or literature or other aspects of the humanities can still have something to gain from older sources, but in general, information that's online that is really out of date, you want to be kind of cautious of. Now, what about the R? That stands for relevancy. Does this match my information need or answer my questions? Again, depending on what you're researching or what kind of question you're trying to answer, does this source actually answer those questions, or is it actually talking about something else? The first A that we get to stands for authority. Who wrote or published this source? What are their qualifications? Did this go through an editing or a peer review process? All of these questions are just to help you determine whether the source was written by someone who's actually qualified to talk about this, right? It's really easy these days to publish information online no matter what your qualifications are, and it's also very easy to obscure that information. So nobody has to know that you're just a random blogger spouting your own opinion. That's why you definitely want to look into who is behind a source, who made it, who's responsible for updating it when you're judging online information. And the next A is accuracy. Do the facts line up? Do they support their conclusions with evidence and references? This is, to me, really important, especially if you're doing some kind of scholarly research. If I find a source online that doesn't have any kind of evidence or references or works cited page or anything like that, there's nothing to tell me that this is anything more than that person's opinion, right? Good scholars back up their work with citations to tell you that there's evidence for the position that they're making. And obviously, any little bit of fact-checking can help with determining accuracy, even if that's just Googling some of the information that you're seeing. And finally, we have purpose. What kind of source is this? What is it used for? Is the point of view objective, or does it lean a certain way, indicating some kind of bias? This is really important in the sort of everyday research that we might be doing, because a lot of things come up in social media or in general conversation that might be based on information that has a different purpose than what you need. A lot of times, to make an informed decision, we need information that we can trust, information that is just objectively trying to educate us. But not everything that you see online fills that purpose. Some of it is meant to sell you something. Some of it is meant to persuade you to vote a certain way. Some of it is meant to entertain you. So looking for the clues to tell you what the purpose of a source is can help you judge whether that is something you can use or not. Okay, so now that we've gone through the CRAAP that can help you identify trustworthy sources, let's try that on an example website that I have here. Here's a site called dhmo.org, which looks to be a site about dihydrogen monoxide research, some kind of chemical and the importance of it, the controversy, something like that. Let's say that this topic came up in a conversation that I was having with a family member or neighbor or somebody online or in real life. Oh, have you heard about dihydrogen monoxide? Well, here's the link that should explain what this is all about. At first glance, just looking around, it appears to give information about how this chemical is dangerous. All right, there are links to special reports and an overview of some kind of controversy, related information to a lot of different things. And if you know anything about chemistry, maybe you'll already have a sense of whether you can trust this source or not, but let's say I know nothing about chemistry. How would I determine if this is a reliable source and if the information here is actually accurate? It's time to use our old friend, the CRAAP test, right? So the first thing to think about is currency. How current is this site? Most websites, if they have this information available, will have it at the bottom somewhere or maybe in an about page. Just look for something that can tell you when this was published or when it was last updated. Here we can see that it was last updated July 1, 2020. So that's a point in its favor. It's obviously very current. Next, let's talk about relevance. Is this relevant to my information need? All right, so if I need to know more about this chemical, well, this is acting like it's written for people interested in this particular compound. But this might not be the only source on dihydrogen monoxide. We'll get to that later. For now, let's think about authority. So where do we find information about the authority behind this website? Who made this or who's responsible for it? One thing that you can kind of see right away is this little logo in the corner for the United States Environmental Assessment Center. So this website is claiming to be a part of this organization. But here's an interesting thing. When you Google United States Environmental Assessment Center, what you find out is that this is not a real organization. It does not exist. So that is strange. Also, if we scroll down again, or on other sites, check for an About page, we can see that this is copyrighted to a person named Tom Way. Again, Google is our friend and can help us fact check a little bit about who Tom Way is, and we find out that he's a professor at Villanova University. So authority is not looking so good for this site, but let's keep going. Accuracy. Now, this site appears to be unbiased with pretty accurate spelling and grammar, so that sounds like it was made by intelligent people. And it does link to reputable pages such as the U.S. Environment Protection Agency. However, if we scroll down to the bottom, we find a little note that says content veracity not implied. So that's basically saying that they are not responsible for ensuring that everything on here is accurate. That is not the kind of thing that makes us trust what is going on here, right? Now, finally, the purpose. What is this site's purpose? Like we said at the beginning, it appears to be highlighting the dangers of this compound. But what actually is this compound after all? Here is where a little bit more fact checking is going to help us, because if we again just Google dihydrogen monoxide, We get some information here about, well, here's the website that we were looking at, but let's keep scrolling. I see dihydrogen monoxide parity and, oh, water. Yes, calling water by an unfamiliar chemical name. Dihydrogen monoxide, people, is water. And with that, we can immediately realize that this dihydrogen monoxide site is not actually meant to be taken seriously. It's actually a satire site that is meant to entertain. So there's nothing actually controversial and dangerous about water except what we already know about it. So there you have it, a quick example of how to use the CRAAP test for evaluating a site like this thing on dihydrogen monoxide. And just to give credit where credit's due, I've used this example from a guide made by Central Michigan University's library on website research. So you can check that out and find even more information and tips on how to use the CRAAP test and how to continue evaluating sources in a good way. And obviously, if you ever have any questions or would like some more help with this topic or other library research things, feel free to reach out to your own Heckman librarians wherever they are.